Hi, I'm going to make a video about chess today and how it relates to INTJs. INTJs and chess kind of go together like peanut butter and jelly. You find them together often. So I'm going to explore that a little bit. I found a lot of INTJs aren't very good at communicating, and it's kind of like prying a pearl from an oyster to get them to talk and get what it's important. So I'm going to try to go over why I like chess and use it as an example of some of the lessons I've learned. And hopefully you may be able to see why INTJs think the ways they do, and why they're drawn to chess, and kind of learn more about INTJs, or maybe even learn a little bit about me. So in the rest of the video, I'm going to touch a little bit about chess history and my personal history. I'm going to go over just the lessons I mentioned. So the INTJ Myers-Briggs personality profile. Usually all analytical types do like chess, or would like chess, or kind of drawn to it, but it's usually the introverts that have time to focus on chess. So Bobby Fischer, for example, a chess champion, he was an INTJ, very obvious he was. He would never go out and party with friends and socialize. He would instead have a chess book and study chess. He would have a chess book in the tub. He would have a chess book at night with a flashlight. And this is definitely an introverted behavior. In the N category, intuition, there's actually a lot of intuition in chess, because it's impossible to figure out, impossible for a human to figure out all these combinations. You have to use your intuition and say, oh, the board looks like this. Whenever a board looks like this, it's going to move, pieces are going to move this way. When it's right here, this piece is here, oh, this is going to become open over there. So there's a lot of actual intuition. So I've seen a lot of intuitive types be able to play decent chess. But logic with it, that's what makes you analytical, N and T. The logic side definitely does help, because you have to kind of value the pieces up together. I've seen a lot backtrack about intuition. I've known a lot of sensor types. They can pick up the game and they can play it, but usually they kind of get to a plateau where they plateau off unless they really dedicate themselves. INTJs, they just have that natural built-in dedication. The last letter J, that's just planning, and that's what chess is about. A lot of it's planning. INTPs, for example, they could play very good chess, but oftentimes their middle game, or kind of in the beginning and the middle, when you set the plan up, they're not as good as INTJs. INTPs usually have better ideas. They just have a hard time sticking the landing. That being said, I mean, Bobby Fischer, he liked to be referred to himself. People would call him, he was a chess genius, but he'd like to call himself a genius who played chess. And that's kind of a misnomer, because everybody thinks that chess players are super smart. They're the smartest people out there. Yeah, they are very smart, but it's more that they have, a lot of them are at a certain level of intelligence, but it's more that they dedicate themselves to a certain game. That's kind of trivial if you think about it. You can't take a chess player and have him do a brain transplant. You can't take a chess player and have him cure cancer or finish world hunger. He just has a very focused intelligence, and that's on chess. So just because you've never been really good at chess or never cared doesn't mean you're not smart. And just because someone's really good at chess doesn't mean they're smart. It just means they've focused on it. Just like with Tom Brady or Brett Favre or Patrick Mahomes. If they're really good at football, they have this natural talent, but they've actually spent a lot of time fostering and developing that talent. And that's what a lot of INTJs do with a lot of things in general, in particular things like chess. But I've known a lot of INTJs that don't care about chess. They've never been interested in it. But hopefully this video will give you like a taste about what chess is about. And at least show you what you may have been missing out on. But you know, chess isn't for everyone. I'll cover history and my personal history, just general chess history. Also talk about life lessons I've learned, and I've grown as a person that I've taken from chess. And hopefully you can use that to learn a little bit more about INTJs. So general history about chess. So the records trace history of chess to India. Some people suspect it may have came from China. There's a very similar game in China, very similar to chess. There's no direct evidence of being traced there. But there's direct evidence in India, but the game looked totally different. The pieces, some of them moved very similar, but a lot of them had different names. Most notably the bishop. The bishop was originally an elephant. Indian warfare, they used elephants. Alexander the Great brought them over to North Africa. Hannibal used it because it was Carthage. Hannibal crossing the Alps with elephants. There you go. But originally it was an elephant, not a bishop. And eventually the game migrated to Iran or Persia. And in Persia, all the pieces kind of took on different names. So, for example, that's where we get the name Rook. Raku, I think I might be pronouncing it wrong. In original Farsi, was the word for chariot, and it moves like a chariot, like a plus sign. But now it's kind of resembles a modern turret of a castle. But it's called Rook because it comes from the Farsi for Ruku, for chariot. During the medieval times, Islam spread throughout the Middle East, and Islam has a very strong prohibition of idol worship. So a lot of pictures and paintings are forbidden in Islam. But it does result in a lot of beautiful art patterns and geometric patterns that are just beautiful. And architecture in the Middle East is very beautiful, actually. But the consequence of that, things like chess pieces resembling creatures and characters was removed, and it was replaced by little notches in the characters. So you took in Persia, the archer, or not the archer, the elephant, and you turned him into this right here, the little notch. And in medieval Europe, when the Crusaders went to the Middle East, they would play games of chess when they're bored, waiting in their castle for an attack, nothing else to do. They'd play chess. And they saw the pieces, and they thought, oh, that must be a bishop, because a bishop wore a hat, had a slit in it, like this little slit. And that comes from the Middle East. And so the game trickled into the Europe mainly from the Crusades. There's some evidence that trickled into Rome and ancient Greece. It was mainly during the Crusades, Dark Ages. And it coincided towards the end of the Dark Ages. You get a lot of people with downtime playing because you get more productivity. And during the Dark Ages, that's when also at the end of it, you have the printing press. It made books very cheap. And that's when the rules of chess get codified. Before that, the rules are a little different. That's when the rules are finally finalized. And it's kind of like at home when everybody's home plays Monopoly a little different. They have all these different rules they go by, but the rules by Parker Brothers tell you how to play chess. No one adheres to it 100%. And it's always interesting when you play at someone else's house. They play it a little differently than everyone else. But when the printing press made books cheap, that codified all the rules. An interesting effect of that right around that time is the queen changed how she played. Now, before that, the queen moved identically to the king. It was the same. But during this time, probably to make the game more exciting, which it does, is they made the queen have unlimited moves and unlimited directions. Very dynamic, but it kind of upset a lot of the more conservative types. They would call it mad woman chess. I just think it's funny because it sounds kind of misogynist a little bit, but I mean, it makes the game fun. If you ever lost a queen early on, it makes it very boring. But having a queen on board makes things interesting. Coincidentally, it also means that chess was the first game ever with a strong female lead. So there's that. Interesting little tidbit of knowledge too. As you may know, when the pawn gets to the end, it gets promoted to whatever piece you want. Most times, everyone picks a queen because it makes sense. But in medieval times, that was scandalous because you had one king with the multiple queens. So they said, no, one queen. That's just not right. They thought it was weird that the king had multiple wives. Meanwhile, Henry VIII keeps separating his wives' head from their bodies to get a male heir to the throne. That's just interesting spin of irony. Well, meanwhile, the king can have as many mistresses as he wants, but he can only have one queen. It's part of the medieval fun times they had. The last tidbit of information I like about chess, a little trivia, is that the folding chessboard was invented by a monk that used to love playing chess. And his fellow monks thought it was detracted from the love of God that he would play chess instead of worshiping. So he kind of hid it, and it would fold and look like a book, and you could just kind of walk around and people thought it was a book. So I thought that was interesting. So that's what I like about history. People that have analytical minds like to look at history because they want to see, this is where we are, how did we get here? Causality, cause and effect. And it's very important for the analytical types. So chess, it's always been evolving over time until they codified the rules. And there's been little rules that have been added and changed. But generally, that's what I love about everything in human society and culture, is that nothing is static. Everything is changing, always evolving. So you always got to be quick on your feet. You got to think on your toes. I also like it in any kind of game or culture is when these little cultural ways of playing a game develop. So in chess, To determine who goes first, you hold out your hand and you pick. And if you pick this hand, it's white. So you're white. It's a little neat thing. It's kind of like, reminds me when we used to play arcade games in the arcade. You couldn't, when you're playing like Taken or Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, who would go next? And how would you determine it? And a lot of times they would put their quarter or their student ID up to see, okay, that's the guy who has dibs next. Little things like that I think are just fascinating. They develop on their own. No one ever codifies it. It's just natural and organic. Another little neat thing in chess, I think, is that when you want to surrender, you just kind of knock over your king. And I just think it's a little eloquent way to show something that you're surrendering. Most advanced people don't surrender like that. Well, I guess they do. Okay, my history on chess. I learned chess when I was younger. I learned it. I've always known the move since I was a kid. I've always been interested in it, but it wasn't really fostered in me. My parents didn't really teach me how to play chess well, and it wasn't done in my school. I learned that it's like I learned the alphabet, but I didn't know how to write poetry or do anything like that. It wasn't until I was in the military. In the military, you have a lot of downtime because you're waiting, always waiting for something. And there was a chessboard, and I'd go and play it with whoever was there, and I'd often lose. So I was trying to figure out, why did I lose? How can I perfect it? And then I'd go to Barnes & Noble, and they had chess books. I'd take a book off the shelf. I would never buy it. I would always take it off and read what I can. Sometimes maybe put a bookmark in there and come back and continue reading. And I started learning what makes a good chess move from a bad one, how to make a good strategy and a bad strategy, and tactics and various tricks of the game. And I eventually learned how to play chess very well. I could beat most people I'd play against. And I would sit at the board when I was in the military base, and we'd have a board up, and I'd play by myself until someone would see me. Well, you're playing by yourself? That's ridiculous. Who did you win or lose? And eventually they would take the bait and sit down and play with me. And I liked it because it told me a lot about their personality, because they would make certain moves and they would move a certain way. I could, if I looked at the moves of the game, I could tell you who played by their personalities. Like I had a friend, whenever he lost his queen, he'd play terrible. It's kind of like how Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the head. And that's how he was. He'd played pretty decent until he lost the queen. And it's like he'd still lose, but he would just play, he'd precipitously drop off his quality of play. And I've had people that they just don't know how to use bishops very well. Or I've had knights. I've seen people play with knights that just really undervalue them. They don't realize how good they are. Actually, the knight is probably the most strategic or most tactical piece there is on the board, because he can jump over pieces. That means he can actually attack the most squares on the board. He can do something that none of the other pieces can do, and actually he's the cheapest. And because of that, this is often a symbol of chess, because it's the most tactically creative piece there is. Even military branches use it as a symbol on their sleeves, their units and divisions. So I think that's interesting too about chess, is when the lowest ranked pieces are the most useful. And a lot of times people undervalue that piece. After that, I didn't really play chess a whole lot. I kind of fell off because I didn't have anyone to play with. So in chess, there's a ranking system. I'm not the best chess player. The ranking system, it's like from 0 to about 3,000 is the ranking system that I'm thinking of. So when you first start and you learn the rules, you're maybe around 300, maybe 500. When you learn how to play it well, you're around 1,000. I was around 1,700, 1,700. I could play okay. I mean, I could beat most people I would go up against. Like a chess master, when you start to be lowest level master, you're about 2,000. When you start to actually be a professional chess player, that's 2,500. Like Bobby Fischer mentioned earlier, and Kasparov and all the greats, they're above that ranking. Another thing I really love about chess is actually computers when they learn how to play chess. I think it's fascinating because they always held chess in such high regard as the epitome of the hardest game, and that was like one of the first games computers mastered. The first computer to beat a human on a very simple level was Deep Thought, I think in the 70s. And the one after that actually beat a chess master, I think it was Kasparov, it was Deep Blue. And I think it's just interesting when you look at how a chess computer looks at a board, especially the early programs. It was brute force strength. They'd look at every thousands of moves, plan them out individually. And it wasn't zero intuition. It was just planning moves 100 moves ahead, and that's not how chess is supposed to work. But eventually, through brute force of millions of calculations per second, the computers would beat the chess masters. But even then, home computers were never that good, but they eventually got better. They designed the programs better and better, and now, like in the early 2000s, it was getting where like a home computer, desktop computer could beat everyone except the best chess masters. Now, with like a cell phone computer, it could beat everyone. I remember when I was first getting into chess, I couldn't beat the computers on the desktop, but I could beat them on like cell phones because they just were not sophisticated enough. You could outthink them basically because they're very limited. Cell phones and tablets have limited resources, so they're not as, they can't brute force think things, so they have a limitation. I think it's interesting that chess programs, one of their main giveaways of how they play chess better than us is actually they retreat. When you play against a human, there's a human bias. I think it's called buy-in fallacy. I might be wrong. But basically you see it in business, for example, like I've invested this much money into this prospect. I can't pull out. If I do, I've wasted all that money. If I've invested all this money in my car and I have to total it, I've lost all that money. I'm going to keep doubling down. But chess computers don't do that. They play smart. They don't have that human fallacy. They actually will pull it back. And that's what's interesting. That's how you know when you play against a computer online if someone's cheating, is you'll make these moves and they'll commit 5 or 10 moves to their plan, and all of a sudden you got them and they screwed up and they'll just retreat. Usually humans don't do that. Humans will bite the bullet and lose. So that's one thing I think is interesting about chess. Another thing I think is interesting about chess computer programs is the earliest chess programs, they actually realized computers were beating them, so they redesigned chess around positional play. Not so much pieces, but where there's no value, you kind of just have an indeterminate value and everything moves around position. It's more about a potential for gaining value instead of actual value. And the computer programs had a hard time because the rules weren't as easy. Conversely, there's a Japanese game called Go. It's a strategy game, not as hard as chess, but it's much more positional. It's actually very pretty if you look at the board. A lot of times a spiral system will develop, and it is just. But now it's getting to where computer programs can actually beat people at Go. I'm interested in when computer programs actually learn chess on their own and beat humans. They haven't quite done that yet. They've done that with some simple Atari games, but not chess, not yet. But eventually it probably will. So, some of the lessons I've learned from chess over the years. I think it goes without saying, planning. That's INTJ's main forte, it's planning. And in many ways, chess is like a microcosm of reality. It's much easier than real life. So that's why a lot of INTJs like it. I mean, it's not like poker where you have to bluff and guile and guts. It's just planning, So it's a lot easier than real life. But because it's easier, it's kind of like practice. And it makes things a lot easier to figure out. And the same thing with planning. It makes planning a lot easier to figure out. And what I see a lot of people when they don't know how to plan right, it's the psychologist Jordan Peterson makes a good point when he mentions you have to pick a target. You have to have an objective, a goal. If you don't have that, you're screwed. So it's like you're an archer. You're aiming at a bullseye and you want to hit it. You got to make your bullseye. And if you don't have a target you aim for, it's pointless. You got to pick a target, fire. Oh, you missed. Adjust. Miss. You got closer. Adjust. Bullseye. You got what you wanted, right? Okay, did you get what you wanted? No. Okay, reevaluate. Is that really the objective you want? So it's kind of like if a guy wants to date a girl. Oh, I'm gonna try to make myself better. How am I gonna make myself better for this girl? I know. I'll go work out. I'll get some muscle that will impress the girl. Okay, I'll do this kind of workout. The guy does it wrong. I didn't get muscles. I missed my target. Reevaluate your process. Adjust your aim. Your aim adjusts. You get more muscles. You go hit on the girl, and the girl's not impressed. Did I have the right objective? Did I have the right goal? No. Reevaluate your goal. What is your objective? Same thing with chess. Chess is actually much simpler than hitting on girls, believe me. With chess, it's really simple. Capture the other king. That's it. Okay, how do you do that? I mean, aside from capturing the king, There's this one little thing that, for planning wise, that makes it easier, is the chessboard is kind of like a battlefield map, and in the center it's like the hill on the battle, and you want to hold the high ground. You control the center. You want to do that and attack the other king. All the strategies in chess revolve around that. That's it, really. Everything is about making that easier or harder. So if you want to capture their king, you control the middle ground or control the high ground, the center board. You want to prevent your opponent from doing the same. There's your objectives. All the other moves are about that. And that's one thing chess teaches you to plan. And sometimes it doesn't matter in life if you have a good plan or a bad plan. It's just having one. Because if you don't have a plan, you have no idea if you're doing the right thing or not. You're just guessing. But if you have a plan and you get feedback it's not what you want, you can at least change your plan. But if you're walking around aimlessly, not knowing, you're hopeless. You might stumble on the right idea, but that's not what chess is about, and that's not what life is about, at least not to an INTJ. So another thing about planning I think is essential is efficiency. And that's a really big thing with INTJs. That's what we really excel at. And if you want to upset an INTJ is make things inefficient. We strive in making systems better. And the same thing with the chessboard. Chessboard, it's about efficiency. Because we both sides have the same objective. I want to capture his king, he wants to do the same to me. Whoever does it in the fewest moves will win. Same thing with controlling the center. So how can we all have the same resources, we all have finite resources, the same pieces. How do I control the center before he does? And that's the interesting thing about chess. Although it's a turn-based game, you actually have a sense of time. So if we're both trying to do the same thing, and I get there in 10 moves, and he takes 30 moves, he's being inefficient. So efficiency is a very important aspect of chess, and same thing with life in general. And efficiency, too, sometimes you can do a move that does two things at once. You might have the option to make a move that does, I'll bring my queen out, and that'll be useful for one thing. But if I bring my knight out, it'll do multiple things. It might even do 3 things. So you do this one instead. And you do a whole game of that where you're doing multiple things. You're being more efficient. And that's one sign of an inexperienced player of chess is they'll bring the most powerful piece out because it's the easiest to use and have her do all the work. That's not efficient. Instead, it's a better move to bring the knight out, to bring the bishop, and so on. Spread out those moves. So efficiency is very important. And it's the same thing in life. I mean, when younger people say, what should I do with my life? What should I do? I want to be an astronaut. Okay, that's your objective, but it's a very set objective. It's kind of like being a hunter and you have one animal you're going to aim at. If you miss it, oh well. Why don't you just keep your options open? Be efficient, not try one animal, be focused. That's what sensor types do a lot. They get mono-focused. Instead, keep your options open. Like, I'm going to run these animals off to the side and I'll have 4 animals to pick from instead of going for that one. Same thing if the person wants to be an astronaut when they grow up. Yeah, that's very good, but why don't you just get a degree in science and technology? That way you can do multiple things. Keep your options open. Don't focus on one thing. And that's a big misconception with chess is people think that, oh, chess is all about, I imagine 20 moves in the future I will win. That's not chess. That's not planning. You're guessing because for that to work, I got to count that you're going to do this move in response. I have no idea what you're going to do. But instead, I can keep my options open. It's more about, I'm going to make this move that gives me, I go from having 3 good moves I can make, but if I make this move, in the future I'll have 5 good moves I can make. It gives opportunities. And I keep doing that towards the end. I'll have 10 and 20 moves I can make, while my opponent only has 3 moves that are good that he can make. And he went from 10 all the way down because not so much I counted the moves in advance, it's more that I use my intuition to keep options open, that give me more options while eliminating my opponents. And efficiency lets that work. I got notes here, let me check. Oh, yeah, efficiency, that's the main thing. The other one, I think is the most elegant and beautiful thing about chess, is unlike poker, for example, you play a game of poker, no one knows what cards you have. There's a lot of bluff. There's a lot of chance. I could bet a lot. I could bet a little. In many ways, poker is much more like real life, I think. But chess doesn't like that. When you make your move, your opponent sees it just as well as you do. You can't hide anything from him. There's a lot of transparency. There's no hiding stuff. You can't. Good chess players don't make a move and say, "Oh, I hope he didn't see it. I'm gonna win." No, a good chess player makes a move like it doesn't matter if he sees it or not. This is the best move I can make. And then you imagine what's the best move he can make. So everything is out in the open. There's no bluffing. And that forces your plan. Your plan must be superior to your opponent's. There's no luck. There's no chance. There's luck. Sometimes people may make a mistake. But generally, or a blunder as they call it. But generally with chess, that's the beauty of chess, is that it forces you to make the best move possible. And that makes you rethink everything in life. And chess is very much a microcosm of the world in the sense that it's practice. And it makes you practice getting better at planning, because you can't rely on luck. And in many ways that emboldens you. You realize, I care about one objective. What is my goal? I don't care about what the other guy's thinking, because I have the best plan. He has his plan, I have mine. The best plan will win. So I better come up with the best plan. So when I walk into a bar and need to get something, like go get a drink, I don't know if their guys are going to be trouble over here or not. I care about my objective. I don't care about what they're going to plan, because it doesn't matter. I have my plan, my strategy, my tactics. Same thing if I'm going to go, it kind of gives you confidence, because you don't second guess yourself. You don't second guess them. That's a waste of your intelligence. Your intelligence is about your plan. What's your plan? I'm going to go hit on that girl at the bar. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what all these people are thinking about me. Doesn't matter about my confidence. I just have my objective. I'm going to talk to her. That's it. How well I talk to her. What things will make it easier for me to talk to her. What can I talk to her about? How can I? That's focusing on my objective. Nothing else matters. So what if someone around me might snicker or laugh? It doesn't matter. I have my objective. I have my plan. It's very liberating. And that's one of the things that chess has always taught me about life, is that once you get that tunnel vision, it doesn't, nothing else really matters. I guess it could be a bad thing if you do the wrong thing in life, but I think for INTJs in general, they overthink things, and if they're not healthy, they turn all that stuff inwardly, and they second guess themselves, and they're always thinking badly. But once you realize you direct it to externally into your plan, your objective, makes things a lot easier. So you go from wondering what people think about you, trying to manipulate and try to play mind games with people, which is a waste of your intelligence, because if you play a mind game or manipulate people, you're doing lots of things, because you're coming up with a plan, trying to put a facade out there, and they have to fall for it. They have to believe it, and you got to read it, and then it's a lot of things to think about. But if you just think about what your objective is, that's all that matters. You're going to do your objective to the best possibility. There's an ancient Japanese swordsman called Miyamoto Musashi. In his book, The Five Rings, he mentions when you draw the sword and you attack. If you do martial arts, they talk a lot about this. When you do a strike or an attack, you don't think about what he could do, he could block. No, you're just going to do your objective is the best possible strike you can do. Period. It doesn't matter if I get hit or I die. It's going to be the perfect strike. Same thing with your plans. And once you have that about you, how you go about your life, how you walk, how you carry yourself, people will sense that. They'll feed off that, and it's confidence. And that's what a lot of INTJs, once they are healthy and develop it, they have this natural confidence that comes off and it radiates. And it comes from a mysterious place that people don't really know, but it just comes from confidence and your plan. So that's probably the most valuable lesson with chess. In the realm of planning and confidence, or first off, before going any further, the difference between strategy and tactics. If you watch news media, or a lot of people mix those terms up, there's a difference. So strategy is big picture, tactics is small picture. So for example, in the Afghanistan war, we wanted to win their hearts and minds, so we make sure they had food and we'd drop it from the airplane so they wouldn't be starving. So the plan was to win their hearts and minds. The tactic was to give them food. So you see that a lot in history, so you distinguish between the two. And it's kind of confusing because it depends on your scale. Because sometimes you shrink your scale, it changes which is strategy and which is tactics. But you got to understand there's a difference. In chess, your strategy is to attack the other king and control the high ground. Your tactics, I'm going to move the knight to the high ground. So there's the difference. And realizing that there's a difference kind of helps when you communicate things. Another lesson about chess I like is a sense of synergy. And that goes with planning. So all the pieces when they work together are actually way more powerful when they work on their own. It's kind of like what I said earlier about the queen. Inexperienced people bring the queen out because she's the easiest to use. But in actuality, she's actually your largest liability. When you lose your queen, you're in big trouble. And actually, she's more like she's like the exclamation mark in a really powerful sentence. You don't lead with her, you finish with her. Your other pieces, your cheaper pieces, actually do all the dirty work for you. That way, if you lose them, it doesn't really hurt you as much. And it's kind of like when you're seeing the movies, they say, oh, pawns always go first. Well, that's the idea. But also, the pieces all work together. You bring your pawn up and your bishop up, but they're also all working to one plan, either to attack this piece or to attack the king or put pressure there. They're never all doing their own thing. Usually, when it's done well, they're all working to a common goal. Same thing with plans in life in general. And that's the interesting thing when I said earlier about efficiency. So if you bring a piece out, it does multiple things. It helps knit the plan together. But also, since like you can't hide anything from your opponent, sometimes if you do multiple things, it helps. Because if the opponent sees you do that one thing, they think, oh, he's just doing that to attack the piece. But he doesn't realize, I actually came over here to do this too. So what if you stop your main plan? You have an option because you did two things at once. And also, it kind of disguises what you're doing. And you could do this in real life too. So like in my workplace environment, sometimes something will break and they have to get it fixed. Now, I could complain to my boss, like, boss, I need to get this fixed. Or I can have a gentler approach. I could talk to one of my coworkers and say, hey, you notice how that faucet doesn't work? That sucks. They should really get that fixed around here. I know my coworker gets really easily upset in that type. He'll get upset and go to the boss and complain. The objective gets accomplished. I wash my hands. I do two things at once. I let other people know about it, it builds synergy, and I don't get associated by complaining. I only give my boss good news. I never complain. So they always associate me with positive things. So same thing with chess. Usually it's more about doing multiple things, and that builds synergy. What other things I was going to talk about? Okay. I think one of the most important lessons I had to learn in chess that's not common for INTJs is that the adage, a good chess player will see a good move and make it. An excellent chess player will see a good move and look for another. And that kind of goes against the J in the personality profiler. The J type, they're more decisive. But as an INTJ, you got to learn to step back and realize maybe I don't have the best plan. Maybe I got to be open-minded. Even though you thought about this thousands of times, if your coworker comes up with an idea, maybe you should listen to him. Even though he's an idiot, or maybe he doesn't know what he's talking about, maybe he's going to bring a new perspective you didn't think of. Or at the very least, he's going to be a test board for your plans or your ideas. You can sound those off to him. Like, what do you think? What are your complaints? Because if he has those complaints, other people are going to have those complaints. And you can incorporate it and reevaluate your plan. So that's probably the most subtle, valuable thing for chess that I had to learn the hard way. All the other things in chess, I think I learned more naturally. See, what else for chess that I've learned? I think when you're playing a game, you have a board set up, he makes a move, get in a routine to say, okay, what has changed? This piece has moved over here. That piece was doing a job right there. Okay, that's open there. What's going on now? How have things changed? And it kind of saves you a little bit of logic room, a little bit of memory. And you could do that in real life applications. It's kind of hard for me to not think about politics or military stuff. But it does help that if this person is holding this thing dear, like an employee is protecting a red stapler, and they're protecting it and protecting it, and all of a sudden the red stapler is gone. You can focus on what's changed, and that saves you memory, saves you time, as opposed to reevaluating everything from scratch. And that's why a lot of S types, they can do this. A lot of the smart things too. It just takes them longer. They tend to be less efficient. So efficiency, when you look at which piece on the board just moved, it saves you a lot of time. And in chess, you have a lot more time, but in real life, you don't. In real life, like if you're riding a motorcycle and you're riding, you can focus on everything, but if all of a sudden this car over here starts to kind of veer to the right, you look at that and why is it veering? Oh, it's going to lane change. And that buys you 2 seconds of reaction time. That's very critical. Another thing about idea of planning with chess, because both people, there's perfect transparency. You can't fool people. You can't trick them. There's no bluffing. You got to have your plan work with theirs. You can't force your plan. And I think a lot of people, S-types, is they get this idea, this tunnel vision. I'm going to capture this piece. And they'll try their darndest moving all those pieces to get it. And at some point, he moves a piece out of the way or whatever. It becomes protected. That plan is no longer viable. You have to either change your plan or rethink it or whatever. You can't too doggedly hold to your plan. A better plan is to make your plan work with the enemy's plan. So that's when you think, oh, the pieces are moving over here. He must be planning an attack over here. That means he's going to be weak over here. He's going to be strong here. I'm going to move my pieces in this direction. Because you can't use brute force. You don't have more pieces than he does. You're not quicker than him. A lot of times it's very equal. So making his plan work best for you works for you. I don't know if I can come up with a world example of that, but it's kind of like I know a literary example, a post-apocalyptic book. They're after a nuclear war, they're starving, and these bandits are attacking their shipments. And if you don't know anything about bandits and raids, they're really hard to stop because they attack whenever they want. And if you put guards on the truck that's shipping grain or supplies, they won't attack it because it's a hard target, and they'll stay away. And you can't put guards on everything because you have limited resources. So how do you work? You make the enemy's plan work with yours. So what you do is you have a regular shipment that looks like it's innocent and soft, and you hide the protection. You bait them. So you don't stop the attack. You allow the attack to work, and you work against it. So a bad strategy like an S-type might come up with, put guards on every post and put lots of ammunition, give the truck drivers weapons, and put armor on the truck. Then they won't attack it. They'll just attack you where you're weak. So you got to incorporate the enemy's plans into your own. Same thing with chess. Is the chess that they bring the piece in to attack? I think I've already covered that, but you get the gist. It also touches on another thing about planning and strategy that INTJs really, really go for, is recognizing strengths and weaknesses. Like Sun Tzu said, you attack where they're strong and avoid where you attack where you're strong and you avoid where you're weak. And it's all about attacking the vulnerable spots. And a lot of that involves analytical ability. That's intuition and logic. So you don't want to attack where a person's strong. And if you try to be strong everywhere, you're going to be weak everywhere. So it's like a needle focusing on their very weak spot. So in chess, you're moving these pieces, and he's really strong on his right side. And then you just come up with your left, and you attack where he's weak. And it's really hard to describe in chess because you got to be able to use your intuition and look at the board. The same thing with life in general. So if you're like doing martial arts, if you're fighting, and if you're fighting a guy and the guy has long reach, you don't stay at your distance. You get in close and tight. If the guy is really short and stocky and stronger than you are, you don't go in to wrestle with him. You keep your distance. So there's lots of things you can do. You try to maximize your strengths and make the opponent play a game where he's the weakest at. The same thing being in life in general. In chess, you can't hide your weaknesses because everybody can see the board. But in life, you can hide your weaknesses, your vulnerabilities, your foibles, And you could listen to the other person's insecurities and vulnerabilities. Now, as INTJs, a lot of times they abuse this ability, and it makes them very manipulative, and they play these games. And it's kind of an unhealthy way. It's a waste of intelligence, if you ask me, because all that energy you use to manipulate people you can use to your planning. But it does factor into your planning in real life scenarios if you know people have these strengths, and if they're your opponents, they are really strong in this category. You can pick and choose your battles. You don't always have to pick a battle you're going to lose. Another thing I really like about chess is they teach you is nothing has a fixed value. So if you look at chess, I mean, pieces have a value, and like if there's a draw, you calculate the pieces. And a bishop, I mean, a knight is the lowest value, and the bishop's only slightly higher. And I notice a lot of S-types, they get stuck on that. Everything has a set value. But chess is not like that, and certainly not life. In chess, it depends a little bit on what part of the game. For example, since the knight can jump over pieces, the knight is actually very valuable in the beginning, because in the beginning, there's lots of pieces on the board. The bishop, on the other hand, although he's ranked higher, in the beginning, he's less useful. But in the end of the game, when the board is more clear, the bishop is way more useful. The knight, not as much. There's also what the chess piece is doing on the board. The chess piece could be way back here, and he's not very valuable. He's not contributing to the fight. But there might be another knight over here doing stuff and attacking pieces and contributing to the battle. He is way more useful than this knight back here. So there is no fixed values of pieces in chess. Sometimes a queen can be worth a good position. And I've played games like that where I've had to give up my queen because the position is so valuable. So that's why a lot of S-types have a hard time with chess. It's because at different setups of the board, pieces are worth differently. And at different times of the game, pieces are worth differently. And that is exceptionally true in life. So for example, I mean, I drive a really old, a 2009 Ford Focus. Kelly Blue Book value is around $2,400. To me, it's worth a lot because I don't have car payments. My insurance is lower. It's a reliable car. I've owned it since I bought it brand new. So it's very valuable to me. It's much more than $2,400. If I buy a new car, it's an unknown variable. It means higher insurance. It means more car payments. I'm probably going to buy a new car eventually, but that's the point, is not everything has a fixed value. Context is important. It's kind of like what my friend used to say about chess is, it's not called chess pieces, it's called chess the game. So when you play chess poorly, you play it when you calculate value of pieces. When you play chess wisely using intuition, it's about position. Where the pieces are on the board is what is important. So I think that's all that's the main thing I want to cover about chess. Hopefully this helped you understand INTJs and chess in general. Hopefully I represented it very well. I'm not the expert on chess, but I'm a decent communicator for an INTJ. Well, I'm okay. Well, if you made this far, you must be very bored with nothing else to do in your life. Oh, thank you very much.